Chapter 18 of The Bat. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Alan Winterrout. The Bat by Mary Roberts Reinhardt. Chapter 18. The Bat Still Flies. He stepped back in the doorway, looked out, then turned to them again. "I come in, please?" he said pathetically, his hands quivering. "I not like to stay in dark." Miss Cornelia took pity on him. "Come in, Billy, of course. What is it? Anything the matter?" Billy glanced about nervously. "Man with sore head." "What about him?" "Act very strange." Again Billy's slim hands trembled. Beresford broke in. "The man who fell into the room downstairs?" Billy nodded. "Yes. On second floor, walking about." Beresford smiled, a bit smugly. "I told you," he said to Miss Cornelia. "I didn't think he was as dazed as he pretended to be." Miss Cornelia, too, had been pondering the problem of the unknown. She reached a swift decision. If he were what he pretended to be, a dazed wanderer, he could do them no harm. If he were not, a little strategy properly employed might unravel the whole mystery. "Bring him up here, Billy," she said, turning to the butler. Billy started to obey, but the darkness of the corridor seemed to appall him anew the moment he took a step toward it. You give candle, please?" he asked with a pleading expression. "Don't like dark." Miss Cornelia handed him one of the two precious candles. Then his present terror reminded her of that one other occasion when she had seen him lose completely his stoic oriental calm. "Billy," she queried, "what did you see when you came running down the stairs before we were locked in, down below?" The candle shook like a reed in Billy's grasp. "Nothing," he gasped, with obvious untruth, though it did not seem so much as if he wished to conceal what he had seen, as that he was trying to convince himself he had seen nothing. "Nothing?" said Lizzie scornfully. "It was some nothing that would make him drop a bottle of whiskey." But Billy only backed toward the door, smiling apologetically. "Thought I saw ghost," he said, and went out and down the stairs, the candlelight flickering, growing fainter, and finally disappearing. Silence and eerie darkness enveloped them all as they waited, and suddenly out of the blackness came a sound. Something was flapping and thumping around the room. "That's damned odd," muttered Beresford uneasily. "There is something moving around the room." "It's up near the ceiling," cried Bailey, as the sound began again. Lizzie began a slow wail of doom and disaster. "Oh!" "Good God!" cried Beresford abruptly. "It hit me in the face!" He slapped his hands together in a vain attempt to capture the flying intruder. Lizzie rose. "I'm going," she announced. "I don't know where, but I'm going." She took a wild step in the direction of the door. Then the flapping noise was all about her. Her hair was bumped by an invisible object and she gave a horrified shriek. "It's in my hair!" she screamed madly. "It's in my hair!" The next instant Bailey gave a triumphant cry. "I've got it! It's a bat!" Lizzie sank to her knees, still moaning, and Bailey carried the cause of the trouble over to the window and threw it out. But the result of the absurd incident was a further destruction of their morale. Even Beresford, so far calm with the quiet of the virtuous onlooker, was now pallid in the light of the matches they successively lighted. And onto this strange situation came at last Billy and the Unknown. The Unknown still wore his air of dazed bewilderment, true or feigned, but at least he was now able to walk without support. They stared at him, at his tattered, muddy garments, at the threads of rope still clinging to his ankles, and wondered. He returned their stares vacantly. "Come in," began Miss Cornelia. "Sit down." He obeyed both commands docilely enough. "Are you better now?" "Somewhat." His words still came very slowly. "Billy, you can go." "I stay, please," said Billy wistfully, making no movement to leave. His gesture toward the darkness of the corridor spoke louder than words. Bailey watched him, suspicion dawning in his eyes. He could not account for the butler's inexplicable terror of being left alone. "Anderson intimated that the Doctor had an accomplice in this house," he said, crossing to Billy and taking him by the arm. "Why isn't this the man?" Billy cringed away. "Please, no!" he begged pitifully. Bailey turned him around so he faced the hidden room. "Did you know that room was here?" he questioned, his doubts still unquieted. Billy shook his head. "No." "He couldn't have locked us in," said Miss Cornelia. "He was with us." Bailey demurred, not to her remark itself, but to its implication of Billy's entire innocence. "He may know who did it. Do you?" Billy still shook his head. Bailey remained unconvinced. "Who did you see at the head of the small staircase?" he queried imperatively. "Now we're through with nonsense. I want the truth." Billy shivered. "See face, that's all," he brought out at last. "Whose face?" Again it was evident that Billy knew, or thought he knew, more than he was willing to tell. "Don't know," he said with obvious untruth, looking down at the floor. "Never mind, Billy," cut in Miss Cornelia. To her mind, questioning Billy was wasting time. She looked at the unknown. "Solve the mystery of this man and we may get at the facts," she said in accents of conviction. As Bailey turned toward her questioningly, Billy attempted to steal silently out the door, apparently preferring any fears that might lurk in the darkness of the corridor to a further grilling on the subject of whom or what he had seen on the alcove stairs. But Bailey caught the movement out of the tail of his eye. "You stay here," he commanded. Billy stood frozen. Beresford raised the candle so that it cast its light full in the unknown's face. "This chap claims to have lost his memory," he said dubiously. "I suppose a blow on the head might do that. I don't know." "I wish somebody would knock me on the head. I'd like to forget a few things," moaned Lizzie, but the interruption went unregarded. "Don't you even know your name?" queried Miss Cornelia of the unknown. The unknown shook his head with a slow, laborious gesture. "Not yet." "Or where you come from?" Once more the battered head made its movement of negation. "Do you remember how you got in this house?" The unknown made an effort. "Yes, I remember that, all right," he said, apparently undergoing an enormous strain in order to make himself speak at all. He put his hand to his head. "My head aches to beat the band," he continued slowly. Miss Cornelia was at a loss. If this were acting, it was at least fine acting. "How did you happen to come to this house?" she persisted, her voice unconsciously tuning itself to the slow, laborious speech of the unknown. "Saw the lights." Bailey broke in with a question. "Where were you when you saw the lights?" The unknown wet his lips with his tongue painfully. "I broke out of the garage," he said at length. This was unexpected. A general movement of interest ran over the group. "How did you get there?" Beresford took his turn as questioner. The unknown shook his head, so slowly and deliberately that Miss Cornelia's fingers itched to shake him in spite of his injuries. "I don't know." "Have you been robbed?" queried Bailey with keen suspicion. The unknown mumbled something unintelligible. Then he seemed to get command of his tongue again. "Everything gone. Out of my pockets," he said. "Including your watch?" pursued Bailey, remembering the watch that Beresford had found in the grounds. The unknown would neither affirm nor deny. "If I had a watch, it's gone," he said with maddening deliberation. "All my papers are gone." Miss Cornelia pounced upon this last statement like a cat upon a mouse. "How do you know you had papers?" she asked sharply. For the first time, the faintest flicker of a smile seemed to appear for a moment on the unknown's features. Then it vanished as abruptly as it had come. "Most men carry papers, don't they?" he asked, staring blindly in front of him. "I'm dazed, but my mind's all right. If you ask me, I think I'm damned funny." He gave the ghost of a chuckle. Bailey and Beresford exchanged glances. "Did you ring the house phone?" insisted Miss Cornelia. The unknown nodded. "Yes." Miss Cornelia and Bailey gave each other a look of wonderment. "I leaned against the button in the garage," he went on. "Then I think maybe I fainted. That's not clear." His eyelids drooped.